all started on the 6th of October 1930 at a place called Ashford, Middlesex in England. That's where I was born at a very early age. The first pictures of me was when I was about 2 months old. All sorts of people took it in turn to hold me. My father with my uncle Fred. My mother and father with me when I was between 1 and 2. Get that hat and coat. On the beach at about the age of 3. I had a nice big teddy to keep me company. That's my grandmother with me. There was plenty of friends and aunties and uncles who wanted to pose with me. Five years old. My first car. Attending school at 6 years old. By the time I was 9, I had a brother Len and a sister Betty. It was just before the war. There was no pictures of me during the war, and we all came through it okay. And the years soon passed. And when I was a teenager, my mother and father took us all to Bognor Regis for holidays. I also had a new brother, Peter. My brother Peter with me on holiday. We all liked Bognor very much. So all the family moved to Bognor about 1952. I was 22 years old. And I was a film projectionist. But I had numerous jobs before that. It was while I was living at Bognor that I met Sheila. Sheila with my sister Betty. And in the middle, there's my brother Peter. After only going out together for 3 months, we decided to get engaged. And we had a small party at my parents' home. We were only engaged for 3 months and decided to get married. These pictures were taken just before the wedding. My brother Len was best man. My sister Betty was one of the bridesmaids. If you can't read the small print, I'll read it for you. The wedding took place at St Mary's Church, Stoughton, on Saturday, of Mr Ronald Alfred James Watson, eldest son of Mr and Mrs A.W.F. Watson of 6 Braeswick Avenue, North Bursted, and Miss Sheila Ann Warder, youngest daughter of Mr and Mrs Warder of the Haven, Warderton, near Chichester. The bride, who was given away by her father, wore a gown of white lace over brocade, with a veil held in place by a headdress of orange blossom. She carried a bouquet of red roses and fern. Her bridesmaids were Miss Betty Watson, sister of the bridegroom, and Miss Joan Hammond, friend of the bride, who wore dresses of midnight blue satin with cape collars and pink headdresses and accessories. The bridegroom's brother, Mr Leonard George Watson, was also best man. After a reception at Warderton Village Hall, the couple left on a touring honeymoon. After the wedding, we went on our honeymoon and visited the Isle of Wight, Brighton, Weymouth, and London. Before I was married, I was interested in magic. And after I was married, I joined the magic circle and became quite now well known as a local magician. At Christmas time, I toured the schools, and Sheila was my assistant. Seen here in the background. And in the summer, I was booked for several years to do a 13-week season at local holiday camps. I also did quite a lot of shows with the Magic Circle as a semi-professional. During that time, we had our first baby boy. We called him John. Here he is with my father, his first grandson. The years rolled by, and by the time he was 3, Sheila was expecting again. And this time it was Tony. And 1 year later we had Stephen. From left to right, there's John, Tony and Stephen. My brother came home from the services in 1956, and we celebrated his return. We never had much time for going out together, what with the children to look after and the finances, and then we made the biggest move of our lives. Me and all the family immigrated to New Zealand on the 26th of May 1964. Here we are on the Southern Cross, the ship that brought us to New Zealand. Tony and Stephen in fancy dress. I entertained on the ship. Then we had our first Kiwi, Andrew, one more boy. The boys all grew up together. An early picture of Tony and Stephen together. Stephen was growing up fast too. When we first came to New Zealand, we lived at Browns Bay. The tall fellow at the back is my brother Peter. We lived in this house at Otara, and we also had this Vauxhall car. Oh, do you mind? That's better. It was really the making of us all, and the boys all done well. Once again, I was a film projectionist. That's me, middle right, with the theatre staff. Mind you, I still had all my conjuring tricks, and still put on a magic show, occasionally. My mother and father celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary. We then bought a small second-hand business. And moved to this big house in Glen Innes. Sheila ran the shop and I went out to work. Andrew was at primary school at Otahu. And John was at Otahu College. Tony was finishing primary and starting intermediate. And Stephen was in the same class as Tony. Enjoying life a bit more, we had time to take off to the beaches and had good holidays. And then we treated ourselves to a tent, and we often had the tent up at Orewa. We then traded the tent for this caravan, an Anglo. It was during this time that we had the opportunity of opening up another shop. So we closed the first shop and opened up Watson Stationery and Toys. And here's the shop. The boys were old enough to lend us a hand in the shop, especially at Christmas time. In 1972 we had a shock. Sheila was expecting again, after 8 years. It turned out to be a delightful shock. After 4 boys, we now had a baby girl, and I named her Tina Ann. The next year we traded our caravan for this 25-foot Crusader. Tina is now 1 year old. And John is engaged to be married. Tony at 16. And Stephen is nearly 15. Andrew in the middle with Tina at about 10 years old. Now we are really beginning to feel old, because on the 9th of February 1975 John gets married. Well, there we are. We're all still alive, with the exception of my grandmother. In this short amount of time, I have covered 45 years of my life, with the aid of 290 photographs. Perhaps you would like to join me again in 45 years' time. I will only be 90. There's 3 things I would like to see. Good health for all of us, all my children happily married, and 3, I would like to see the year 2000. But who knows, tomorrow may be the end.